Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney, and thrilled today to bring you two pals of mine who are also amazing leaders. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about them first. And you may recognize them also because you've probably been to one of their establishments, if not many of them. This is Julie Reiner and Susan Fedroff. They are here today. They are the visionary co-owners behind some of New York City's most influential cocktail institutions, like Flatiron Lounge, Clover Club, and now Milady's, bars that really help shape the modern cocktail movement in America. Julie's here. She helped define what it really means to marry kind of hospitality and craft cocktail. It kind of came to acclaim, I think, probably playing a key role in establishing the Pegu Club, one of Manhattan's most influential early cocktail bars. And later, with Susan, opened up Clover Club that is still running. It has to be one of the longest running bars, I swear to God. It's an amazing bar if you've never been to Clover Club in Brooklyn. It is a staple there for locals and for cocktail lovers around the world to visit. They launched in 2020 Social Hour Cocktails, which was a premium line of ready-to-drink canned cocktails, right? And you also might recognize Julie as a judge on Netflix's mixology competition, Drink Masters, where she brings deep industry experience, passion for craftsmanship to a national audience. And Susan, who you may not recognize as much because she's behind the scenes, but just as important in the mixology, so to speak, of their leadership and in what they create. But she really is the expertise in operations and hospitality, been a powerful complement to Julie's creative side. And together they've built these enduring institutions that are just as much, what I love about them is they're just as much about community as they are about cocktails. And throughout their careers, they've elevated bartending to a respected craft and a mentorship tradition, championing quality. Julie has been honored as a James Beard Award nominee for Outstanding Wine and Spirits Professional, and has earned numerous industry accolades, including Wine Enthusiast Mixologist of the Year. They are two awesome folks. They also are a couple and work together, which we're going to get into that because that also is amazing about the two of you. And they're just dang fun people to be around. So welcome, Susan and Julie.
Wow, that's quite an introduction.
Well, only
Thank
the
you so
best.
much for having us on, Christine.
Sure. I'm excited to have you because I always love hanging out with you, and it's going to be hard not to just tell stories and laugh the whole time. But we are going to try to pull some of the gems that are within your arsenal there for our listeners here. But I want to take you back first because we're really big on stories and on kind of two things that we focus on a lot are like stories of both failure, because I think that people learn from those failure things or those hard moments as much as maybe more than we learn from the positive things that have happened in our life. So if you're, and I know you guys are good at looking at your career now and being able to see that those moments. And then also at the end, we're going to want to give folks tips on how they can, take a little bit about what you've done and do it in their own careers. So let's go back first, like when you opened, I guess, Flatiron Lounge. I'm just curious because that was when the craft cocktail movement wasn't what it is today, So what did you kind of see at that point that others maybe weren't seeing? What happened back then?
Well, it was really at the establishment that I was working before we opened Flatiron Lounge, where I started taking a little bit more of a culinary approach to cocktails. I was managing a little lounge in the West Village, and sort of overnight found myself on the front page of the food section of the New York Times, in New York Magazine, where they were writing about the drinks that I was doing. And I really, looking back, it wasn't like I was doing anything groundbreaking in today's sort of cocktail world, but I was using fresh juice. I was infusing fresh things into cocktails. I was using tea, and I was really just trying to give people the best thing I could in a glass. And it went from zero to the whole bar being packed overnight. And, we realized very quickly that New York City is the most competitive place on earth. And this was completely an untapped market in a city where everything has been done, And so I started talking to some friends. I was like, oh, we need to open a high-end cocktail bar because New Yorkers want the best of everything and they're willing to travel for it. And that was sort of where that started. And, we knew that like timing is so much of everything, and the time was right for it. And New Yorkers wanted it.
It's amazing because now we take it for granted that you can get a great cocktail or a great cocktail bar anywhere, but it was not the case back then, right? I
No,
remember
Not
not
at
at
all.
all.
having not at all.
No, and it was
Well,
it
and
was much
also
more of a
chefs
norm.
weren't very supportive of bar personalities either. I think that was a part of what held it back, is that the chefs were like, I'm the star. They didn't want anybody else front of house taking anything away from them.
Interesting.
So it wasn't until so they started kind of realizing, oh, this is another area of our restaurant that we can make money on.
Yeah, and when we were living in San Francisco, and it seemed to be much more the case in San Francisco that there were a lot of women behind the bar. There were a lot of female-run programs. They were using fresh juice in all these programs, a much more artisanal approach to cocktails. We'd see coming from a kitchen. And when we came to New York, that wasn't the case at all, which was kind of surprising for us because we had thought San Francisco is a small city. New York is going to be much more global and be doing everything, and it just wasn't yet. And so I feel like we had a little bit of a head start because it was what we were doing on the West Coast before we came here.
Interesting. That is very controversial, Susan, that you
Oh,
just
wow.
took
East
away the
Coast.
craft cocktail movement from New
I need
York.
to
I
have
love
a
it.
game sign. I can
We're very controversial here on stepping into your leadership. I love it. But that's interesting because, we take it for granted now. All of my friends, everybody wants, cocktail pairings just as much as they want wine pairings.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know that, if we jump right into it, because you guys had that success early on, and then you did partner with other people in other bars as well, right? Was that before you started with Clover, or how did that work?
We did. We always talk about when we started Flatiron, and I had been working in government and in finance, and I took a big leap out of that back into hospitality, which is what I loved and where I wanted to be. And I think after a few years of living in New York City together as a couple and working completely opposite schedules, that was also a part of the catalyst for us to want to have a project together so that we could sort of start to see each other again on some regular basis, because it really was opposite schedules that we were living. This partnership that we had when we broke ground on Flatiron was the greatest example of like how to do it right, at least from that vantage point of everyone represented a different skill set in this group. It was a group of 6 people, and we had people with engineering, construction, understanding of city agency dynamics and how to navigate them, reading leases, design, operations, finance. And we didn't open our first business with everybody who was doing the same job that we did. And it made for this phenomenal partnership because we all sort of were able to divide and conquer. Everybody trusted everybody else to do what they did really well. And that's why this end result was such a success, I thought.
Love that. Yeah, really being able to be experts in each lane, because
Yes.
so often when people partner, no matter what the business is, we, likes like. And so we often find people that are just like us because it's fun. And then, boy, maybe we have some real blind spots there when it comes to
Yeah.
the business.
The amount
Really
of
cool.
bartenders I know who open bars with other bartenders, it happens all the time. I'm just like, you don't need somebody who knows what you know. You need somebody,
Yeah.
which is also why Susan and I as a team work so well, because I am very much front facing. I started out obviously behind the bar and doing cocktails, but now I, am out there to the press, and I do a lot of media, and Susan handles all of she has a master's in finance, and we'll sit down and she's like, here's the P&L, these are the things that you really need to know, which
True.
for me is very helpful, because if you sent me the P&L, I'd be like, so you don't want to open something with somebody who knows exactly what you do.
Yeah,
And
really
also,
good.
yeah, the people who are passionate about what they do. I mean, like we laugh at a lot, our other business partner and I, about what Julie does. We call it jazz hands.
Flair.
Flair. Yeah. But she is the brand. We couldn't do what we do. Nobody would be coming in here if we didn't have the sort of global recognition that we have because of what she represents for this business. We couldn't do it, and we don't want to do it. We are very content staying in the tiniest office ever built in all the land and hanging out back there. And
It's true. We teach all the time this thing, and I'm gonna send it to you guys because I want you to take it. But it's this assessment called the 6 types of working genius, and what we're always find is those businesses that have a really good mix of all different kinds of geniuses, right? Whether it's the front facing, the back facing, whatever, have the most success. It's when you see everybody in one category. You know what I mean? We see it a lot of times, like engineers. Oh my God, they're all in these 2 areas and they're really struggling in some of those other more front facing
yeah,
areas. So that's a really great thing for all of us, no matter where you are, to learn from.
I think it was a wonderful dynamic, and I think that we had a lot of success with that with Flatiron and with Pegu, and the group, our partnership group, grew even more with Pegu. And then we sort of had this very dynamic team of talented people, but then we had too many people, and it became very difficult to be able to make democratic decisions about business and where we wanted to go and what direction we wanted to move in. And that was sort of the catalyst for us wanting to that, and moving to Brooklyn was more so, let's do something in Brooklyn. Let's maybe shrink this partnership down. We'd like to have a little bit more of the say in what's going on in this business because we were the ones really running it on the day to day.
Yeah. I just have to, you reminded me of something when you said Pegu. So many people my age or even a little younger, Gen Xers and millennials that are New Yorkers that have been in New York for a while, have a memory at one of your bars, right? No matter what it is. Like you can ask most people I know and they have a fond memory of something. And one of the ones that just came to mind was, and I hadn't planned to even talk about it today, but I went to Pegu Club with a friend of mine who was getting married. And she said, my husband and I came to Pegu Club when we were just dating or whatever. And there was this one drink that we really loved. And we're having our wedding out in California. Christine, come with me to Pegu Club because we're going to try these 5 cocktails. I want you to tell which one do you think we can recreate at my wedding. So we went up, and what I love about your bars is that we went in there and we told the bartender, this is why we're here. Like, we want to have the cocktails that somehow she can recreate in California. And he was so great. And he was immediately like excited and like, okay, I'm going to give you ones that will be that the different people are going to like, that you can redo. This is going to be too, specific to a certain kind of drink or whatever. And he was so excited that we felt like, Pegu Club was always packed, but we felt like we were the only ones in there. He's setting up different drinks. And sure enough, she picked 2 of those drinks to go out on her menu out in LA. So that warm feeling of like, this isn't a threat or I don't have time for you.
Yeah.
In a cool club like that, they were like, loved it. To me, it was amazing and made me like a fan before I even knew you guys. I didn't even know you back then.
I
Yeah.
love that because that was something we worked so hard to create in these bars, because there were plenty of places that you could go to in New York where you felt intimidated walking through the door. You felt like you didn't belong there. And we really wanted to create the exact opposite of that experience. We wanted everyone to feel welcome and to be excited about these programs that were new and different and want to ask questions and learn something and try something new and not feel like a jerk, for being in a new place.
Julie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, the thing that we have done best is to create sort of neighborhood bars in a big city, where people feel really welcome, but they have like global appeal. So neighborhood bars, global appeal, and they have a lot of longevity because of that. A lot of our bars have been open 15 years at least. Clover Club is going on 18 years. We become sort of a part of the fabric of the neighborhood. People meet there, they have their engagement party, and then a couple of years later, they're having a baby shower and a 40th birthday party. And so, being that to the community is very important to us. And then we also strived to do that with our team as well. We have a lot of bartenders who stay with us for 15 years. We have 18 years, some of them who've worked at Flatiron and then Clover Club, and Milady's. So, it really is sort of a family vibe and yet globally recognized.
Do you think because you have had those folks that come with you to each a bar have been there for a long time, does that help you in terms of creating the culture, or do you have to do certain things with training your staff? Like, what are the things that you do that you think keep that spirit in that?
We really try to keep everybody very much engaged. I think consistent training, and absolutely it helps to have people who've been there for that long. Clover Club, people come in and it's sort of like, this is the history of Clover Club. And when you have people who have worked there since nearly the beginning, they know what has gone on there, and they can teach sort of our theory on drinks and our theory on hospitality and how we want people to feel when they walk in the door, and to sort of push off a lot of the attitude that you get from bartenders oftentimes in other bars where they just can't be bothered. People come back for experiences. You can go anywhere and have a great drink. It's not enough to have good drinks and beautiful glassware. It has to, you have to feel good going back over and over. And it's the same for the team.
Yeah, and I also think that our bars are so very different from each other, even the ones that we have had that are literally across the street from each other. And those teams are very different, but we have so many people who have worked for us for such a long time and have been a part of the sort of fabric of what we do. They understand our management style and the way that we like to operate and the level of respect that we have for the people that we work with. And it's never, I don't know that any of us have ever described our team as people who work for us. They work with us, and think that they understand that and they feel that, and there's a sense there is a sense of family in there. I mean, we're not a huge chef driven space. We have had chefs, come in. We've had one now that's been with us a long time. We made him a partner, ladies. But our team, who's in the kitchen at Clover Club, has been there. Like 2 of those guys have been there nearly like the full 18 years. And we've told every executive chef that we've had over the years, when they come in, we're like, just so you know, you're the one that's going to go. There are no changes in this kitchen, and we will always take their word over yours. Like, just so it's fair. We say that in the interview process. Like, there is a core and a backbone to our team, and we would never have the level of success that we have without their dedication. And so, we are very much aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I imagine that in your business, there's a lot of turnover in the business, but really there isn't in your businesses.
There can be. I mean, I think that we've seen, I think probably one of the challenges we've had, maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, are people who come in and, who want to move up very quickly. And we're thrilled to promote from within. That's usually the way we love it. I mean, our, favorite story with one of our partners is that he started as a bar back, became head bartender, and then became a junior partner. And that's the way we like to work with the people that we work with. But the turnover that we see sometimes that can be kind of frustrating is when people come in and they're like, I'm going to do this job for 6 months and then I'm going to go get a brand ambassador job, sort of use it as a stepping stone because of the reputation of the bar. And that can be sort of tough sometimes, but I think that's true of any industry.
Yeah.
It's also
Because you're giving to the community as a whole, like you're creating something, and that's a very individualized approach. Yeah. Julie, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's a lot of the time it's sort of, you have to do the work, you have to put in the time. But a lot of the younger generations, they're seeing me flying around the world doing all of these talks or going to cocktail functions in Barcelona. And they have a thought that they are going to be a bartender for a year, and then suddenly they're going to be flying to Mexico to visit a distillery. And that's not how it works,
Yeah.
But, but many of them, they will stay for a year and then they're ready to move somewhere else because they feel like, I'm a superstar now. That has definitely been challenging. And I feel very lucky to have a team at Clover Club who, we have a lot of guys there who just really love working the stick. They love getting behind the bar. They like having conversations with people, and they respect the craft of being a bartender. I'd love to see more of that from younger generations where, none of this happened overnight. I was a bartender for a very long time before I got any of these amazing perks and the ability to travel.
It's usually our team members who have been with us the longest who will come and be like, I don't think that one's going to last.
They know. they're on the influencer track. They're ready to fly. Yeah, and sometimes that's a really hard, lesson for those folks too, right? Along the way, because there's kind of an unrealistic expectation of what that can be done, in a
Sure.
short period of time. But what is you said something there that I thought was interesting, because one time I went into Clover Club. My kid was going to middle school in near there, and I needed to, like, I don't know, he needed to change clothes before something, he needed fancy clothes, God forbid, for something, and I had to go leave them in your bar. And I remember I came by and I loved it because you guys were working on it was like an innovation lab, I'll call it. But you were working on some new cocktail things, and you said, "Oh, this is what we do." And you had me try versions. So of course I love that. But I loved it because I learned a little bit in that little lab that you were working on. And I had gone to a bar somewhere else that was one of these new cocktail bars at the time that said, "Oh, you tell us the ingredients and we'll create this cocktail for you." That was their deal, right? And you'd get some, $40 cocktail at the end of the day when you told them the just ingredients. And I said, "Oh, the cocktails were terrible." Because of course, when you're just a drinker of them, you can say all the things you want, but they don't necessarily go well together. And you said to me, you said, "Yeah, that," or maybe it was the guy behind the bar, who was like, "Yeah, that doesn't work most of the time. So people will say that and we'll be like, maybe this." And so we do these innovation labs, or whatever you called them. You didn't call them that. I'm putting that name on it.
We call
Every
them
so often.
R&D. It's
R&D,
called,
there you go.
yeah.
And that you were just playing around with things. And I thought, what a great thing for any business to have is a moment when there's no customers there, when just the people that work there are tasting new things, going, "I've got an idea I've been working on at home. I want you guys to try it." And just to allow that moment for innovation, because otherwise you could keep the same cocktails on a bar forever and people would probably still come to Clover because it's been there for so long and it's got such a reputation. But to push yourselves in that way, I found really cool. Do you do that at all the places? Is that a
We
normal
do. We
thing?
do. It is normal. I mean, we do seasonal menus. So we'll change the menu entirely twice a year. We do a spring summer menu and a fall winter. And yeah, we do R&D, and some people come with ideas and they'll work on it for 2 months, and at the end of the day the drink is just not menu worthy, and that's okay, because it's all
Who
a part of
decides
the
that?
process.
Who's the mean one
Well-
that decides that?
I think you met Judge Julie.
Judge
Yeah.
Julie.
Judge Julie. I mean, my thing is, like, it might be tasty, but to make it onto a menu, it has to be excellent. It has to be.
What do you tell
something
them
that,
when that comes up? Because I think I struggled with this early in my career. Like, I'd have people come up with great ideas and I just so wanted to believe in them that I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, let's try them all." And other people would be looking at me going, "Oh my God, what? This is a lot of resources going to this." So what do
Yeah.
you tell them?
I mean, I am generally pretty brutally honest. And I mean, oftentimes I will try, like, Tom Macy and I will sit down with the bar team and we help them to edit their drinks so that they can become menu worthy. So my goal is always to have them all have their drinks on the menu, because it gives them ownership over it. It makes them excited to talk to guests about the menu and excited to suggest their cocktail. Sometimes by the time it gets to the menu, 5 different people have had a hand in editing whatever the original idea was. So it becomes really a group effort to get it to a place where it deserves to be on the menu. So, that is really what the process is. And at the end of the day, whoever's idea it started with feels like this is their drink. But sometimes Tom and I edit the drink so much that it's kind of our drink, but we let them think it's their drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Susan?
Program lends to, it's a creative program and we want people to be creative. And I think they understand that there's somewhat limitations on the resources that we have for them to be able to just do anything they want. But there is a lot of freedom to experiment with different ideas and different drinks, and not necessarily just the people behind the bar. We've also had servers, people who work on the floor, have different ideas about things that sort of start that seed and it grows from there. And sure, we walked in, we have a lab in the back area of Clover Club, and you'll see infusions happening or fat washing. And the first time I walked in and saw a couple of bottles of whiskey sitting with like a vat of peanut butter, I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on there, but I bet it's going to turn out great. Nothing that it would come to me to think of. But I think part of what we do, and this is universal within like the three core members of our ownership team, is that we hire smart, talented people. We're not intimidated by hiring people who are smarter than we are. We want them to be, and we want them to be better than we are and evolve with the ideas that evolve the ideas that we have and be better. So I think that's the environment that we create, and it seems that people are thriving in it.
Susan, I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that you regularly cook for the staff. Is that true?
Well, in a way, not at the space. When our daughter, when Maya was very young, we had what she termed family Fridays, which was basically just like it evolved into a dinner party at our home. And yeah, it would be a regular sort of like traveling crew from, places, and whoever was free that night would come over. It turned we used to call it Whiskey Fridays. Maya called it Family Fridays. And we're like, that's so much more wholesome.
Good job.
Yeah. It was definitely like, so the person who was coming for the first time, who had never been to one of our Whiskey Fridays, would be like, okay, what's your favorite food? And that would be the focus of what I was going to make that night, for like the new guests. But yeah, we've had, we did that probably for a solid 2 years, every Friday. And sometimes it was just 3 people, but sometimes it was 12. And we're like, everybody's welcome. Let's go. It's going to be an all-nighter and grilling. And sometimes it was, we had one friend who belonged to a co-op, and she would show up and she'd be like, I've got eggplant and calamari. And it was like a quick fire challenge. I'm like, great.
I love it.
Yeah. Like, we're going Malaysian curry. Let's do this. Yeah. So it was super fun and it was great.
Yeah.
It's that same thing, that feeling of family.
Well, and I also love it because you're such a great cook and you guys complement each other in that way also really well. But that you find ways in your business to do the things that you love. I don't know that you're always able to do that, but it seems like that from the outside anyway. Let's talk about what happened in 2020 that massively hit all of us, but certainly the hospitality industry like crazy. What happened to you guys in that time maybe? And then what are some lessons that you took away from that? I don't know who wants to start. Julie, it looks like you're ready to go. You got
Sure,
an idea?
I'll start. I mean, it was when you open businesses in New York, there are always things that you're worried about. A global pandemic was not one of them, ones that came to mind. So as this whole thing was unfolding, I mean, we went from, okay, well, we'll just have people at these tables and we'll wipe them off, to the next day being closed. I feel like for me, I think it was the hardest because I was just like, if people can't stand next to each other, we're screwed. What are we going to do? This is our livelihood. And Susan and I are married and we're not diversified at all. I know a lot of people who one person's in sales and could do, for us, it was, we were really devastated by this whole situation.
Yeah.
And it was, we were reinventing our business every single day for those first couple months. And we did all the things, it was like, how can we stay alive here? And thankfully, Christine and Susan and I, we would get up and get dressed and go to the bar. And even though we couldn't open our doors, we talked about what we could do, and we started doing to-go cocktails. And I started teaching Zoom cocktail classes out of my house, sending out, I created all of these classes where I would send my book and cocktail ingredients to people, and then I would Zoom in and teach the class on gin drinks. So, we are scrappy, and we've certainly, figured it out. I think one of the best things that came out of it was, we really got to step back and look at the business and the things that we did every single day. And we just kept doing year after year, and thought, how can we change this to make it better when we do come out of this? And we had been doing a lot of batching, more batching than we'd ever done previously. And we thought, this is actually a really great way to get drinks out faster, where bartenders can actually have more conversations and they're not just like measuring every single ingredient to order like we had been doing for 20 years, So I think that was a good thing.
I think there was an understanding too. I mean, when that first happened, still had, the bar, we still had Pegu in Manhattan. And I think that we quickly understood that the community in Soho, many of whom had left and gone to their summer houses to stay, or younger people that just left the city altogether, like this, we're not going to get supported here. Like, we're not going to be able to do to-go cocktails. Nobody, like they were at Clover Club, was going to sit outside and eat pancakes when it was 15 degrees and, to support you so that you would come out the other side of this. And so we had to close that business immediately. And that was a corporate business, like a building management company. And I think there was a great deal of stress in getting ourselves out of that situation that we had. I think we were about 15 years in over there. And so we had to just shut everything down and try to work it out with this company to get to close. And we were very concerned that we were going to be on the hook for a lot of money on that, which we managed to sort it out. But focusing just on Clover, I don't think that we knew on the start of it that it was going to be 18 months of pivoting and changing your business model day in and day out. And I mean, we've been in New York for 28 years. Like, we've been through September 11th, the blackouts, like all the things, and the pandemic. Once we got past the 4-week mark, we're like, all right, what do you got? We're like, wait, we got this now. We can figure this out. And yeah, it's true. You sort of, once we realized we weren't going to lose everything, and Julie talks about making these boxes and sending them out and teaching classes. We had a full-on manufacturing company out of our dining room. She was doing sometimes 8, 9 classes a week. It was a huge business. We were carrying out hundreds of boxes and shipping them out. We had a relationship with the FedEx company on the corner. We did a full pivot that I credit the Gen X thing once again. We're like, we will figure this out.
I love it. You know what I love is that, and I've heard this from some other people who came out of the COVID experience really well, and their businesses are thriving today, were people who not only looked at how do we just whack-a-mole solve these problems as they come up, but used it as an opportunity to have conversations like, wait a minute, what can we step back and look at to make this better? How can we envision a future that's very positive coming out of this? And I find that to be a very interesting distinction, because as business leaders, we can have all of our meetings easily just become about problem solving and putting out fires, right? But to have a moment where you're like, yeah, but what's happening now that could be better? What's possible? What can we use from this to take into a different vision of something even more amazing than we had before is so critical. Someone said to me yesterday, which I thought was such a great quote about this in particular. He said, the biggest, the studies show that the biggest arsonists are bored firemen. He said, you got to be careful with your business that you're not creating people to create problems because they like fixing the problems,
Yeah.
but that you're really going to some sort of vision of a future time or something. So
crazy. One phenomenal thing that came out of the pandemic, and we laugh about this now, but our partner at Milady's, who was the chef at Clover Club, who he had just hired 3 weeks before everything shut down, the world shut down. And we knew he was super talented. And we were worried 3 weeks in, nobody was leaving their house at this point. And I get a call from him and I was like, this is it. He's going to tell me he's moving back to Vermont. We're going to have no chance to get anything out of his kitchen. And I talked to him and he goes, listen, I left my sourdough starter in the walk-in. Do you think I could get in there to get it? Because I'm working on this bagel recipe. And I was like, this is our guy. This is our guy. He's our people. Yeah, that was it. And then he started creating, this kind of dough, and he made sandwiches, which is what we were selling at the front door when we were working off of a folding table, because the laws that were changing daily is that you have to sell food if you're selling to-go cocktails. So he came up with these sandwiches that we were then selling along with the cocktails so that people can walktails and sandwiches. That's what we had.
It's a real sense of ownership, that people get to create those things, see it happen,
Yeah. Yeah. And
real
it's been
win-win.
since we were all waiting tables and stuff, but we all jumped back into grassroots. It was like Julie calls it the owner show. We were the ones working. We were the ones waiting tables and running the food, doing everything, because we couldn't ask staff to come in and do anything. We needed people to feel comfortable. We had like 2 people who were just like, I'm good. And they came in and they worked with us for a while, but it was really just us.
Was there ever a moment, and maybe it wasn't even then, maybe it was some other time where you just thought, you know what, we're done. Like, let's just do something else. Let's walk away from this. Like, how do you do it as a couple? Does one of you go through moments like that and the other one picks you up? Like, how does it, what happens?
I mean, there was really only one time, I think, that we nearly left, and that was right after September 11th, because we lived in the closest residential building to the South Tower and had a very traumatic experience that day. And we ended up going to Hawaii, where I grew up, for about a month to sort of heal and figure out what we wanted to do. And we were seriously contemplating moving there, because when you're faced with life and death, you are very much like, what matters and what doesn't matter. And it's very much black and white, and suddenly all of the daily stupid things that happen in life, you're like, none of that matters. Let's move here. It's beautiful and it would be a very nice quality of life. And we could look at the ocean every day. But in being there, we realized the opportunity for Flatiron Lounge to be a part of that opening team was on the table. And we were like, you know what? If we leave because of this experience, then they win. And it would have changed the trajectory of our lives 100%. And we decided that we weren't done yet, and we came back, and I think that has really been the heart of like who Sue and I are as people and as New Yorkers and as Gen Xers. We're like, we will continue to fight, and keep going. And I think that also the best thing that came out of the pandemic was from, I'm teaching these classes, and the women from this one organization, it was like a women's group, and I'm teaching them classes. And as we came out, the woman who was booking me, Alex, was asking me, she's like, oh, meet me for a drink, and wanted to see about opening a bar potentially in Hudson Yards. And I was like, no, I am not interested in that, mainly because I don't want to hang out in Hudson Yards. She was like, well, have you ever heard of this bar? It was called Milady's. And it was one of those like record scratch moments. And I went and looked at this space. She was dating the daughter of the family who owned this building. We ended up, I'm there, and she was like, oh, how much would it cost to open a place like this? So I told her. And then she basically went to the women who I'd been teaching for over a year and created an investor group because they wanted to see us succeed and move forward. And so it was like, here's this incredible space coming out of the pandemic. They were like, we want to see Julie, and Susan succeed and move forward. And they were our investors in Milady's. So you never know.
Julie rode a bike home from that meeting and was contemplating telling Christine and I, because she's like, if I tell them, they're gonna move on this. I already know it. And she told us, and I had a financial forecast together within 48 hours for a formal presentation to that group. And we moved forward. That was it. Done. Let's go.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's amazing. It's so true that if you just keep doing what you're good at and you see more people, that the work will come somehow, that's great.
And not to be like, corny or anything, but it's like, it's gratitude. Like, honestly, like that experience that we had before we opened, Flatiron with September 11th, like everything after that is legitimately a gift. And we will never forget that. Like it has framed everything in our life from that. We're just continually so appreciative of everything that we have, and not afraid of hard work. And because it all feels like it's just a gift after that. It really does.
I want to also bring up this one thing, because we've talked about it a little bit personally when we've met, but I do think it's interesting for people to look at in your industry, and that is the amount that people are not drinking alcohol. Like those numbers are going down, right? Like the generations coming up seem to drink a little bit less. I don't know, but you guys are pivoting again with that. And I imagine that other bars that are remaining successful are. And so I just wanted, like, what are the kinds of things that you're doing to keep people coming to a bar when people are drinking less alcohol these days?
They're just drinking differently, I mean, we still see plenty of people who are drinking and they come to us.
No, I'm doing
I think
my part.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of chatter online and, about how the next generation isn't drinking and all of this stuff. But I think that they're just drinking differently. They will go out and they'll do what we call zebra striping, where they have one alcoholic drink and then they go to the next bar and they have an NA drink. So there are non-alcoholic spirits and ingredients, and people are creating drinks that are compelling and tasty that don't have alcohol or that are low ABV, because I
think
feel
you're going to
like,
have to say what these words mean, just in case I have some people listening that don't know. So
yeah,
can
so
you just define those real
yeah.
quick?
So low alcohol by volume means that it's less alcohol in one cocktail than, say, what a margarita might have. Let's say a margarita has 2 ounces of tequila. You might have a cocktail that has 1 ounce of tequila and that has some other non-alcoholic ingredients in it. So it brings down the content of alcohol that you're consuming to a lower level. It used to be that people expected a cocktail to have a base of 2 ounces of full-proof spirit. But yeah, I mean, they aren't drinking in that way anymore. And there are a lot of sober people also who want to go to a bar with their friends and sit down and open a menu and not have to say, excuse me, do you have a mocktail list? Because that used to be what it was. And now those drinks are just included on the menu. So you can sit down and say, I'll have the Grey Gardens, and nobody at the table has to know that that drink contains 0 or lower alcohol than what somebody else is ordering. Everybody's just having the same experience, and it doesn't matter. It's just about being with people and not being on your phone and having conversations. And I think that is very important to these younger generations who are growing up with their phone in their face and then a computer. And, it's much needed escape to have these third spaces where we can be together. And whether you're drinking alcohol or not, was a much different thing for our generation.
Right. I think that they're still coming into an environment. It's still hospitality. There's still, it's very festive and fun. We've also increased the amount of private events that we're doing. And there's just everything available for everyone. And it's still New York City with the amount of people that live here. Even if a portion of the population has decided that it's just not healthy for them to go into cocktail lounges anymore or restaurants or any place that has a bar, there's still a large group of people that incorporate that into their entertainment in the day-to-day.
Okay, for the last couple minutes while I have you, we're going to ping pong back and forth between the two of you. I'll start with Julie and then Susan of just a couple of tips, because you guys set this up, teed this up perfectly for me, in that tips that people can do to create experiences. You guys create experiences in your bar. I talk about this all the time, and I talk about it in my upcoming book as well. Like, when you walk into your bar, it's not just a bar. You're not just getting a drink, right? You're going into a whole vibe, a whole feeling that we've alluded to. What are some tips that you use to create that vibe? Like, what's one of them, Julie? And then I'll go to you, Susan, for one.
Gosh, I mean, it's ambiance, it's lighting, it's music, it's thinking about all of the senses, It's not just about consumption of food and beverage.
It's all those. Those were good 3 tips. Music, lighting, right? The scenery, the way the chair feels, all of those things, right? Yeah. Susan, you got one?
Yeah, I think, like Julie said, I think it's sensory. I mean, I think that when people come in, I try to pay a lot of attention to the entryway of what's happening. When seasonally, there's always flowers, there's always something beautiful. Like you are walking off the streets of New York City into something that is going to feel better than whatever was happening in your day. And that is what we're looking to create, an escape.
What about, Julie, you and I have talked about this a little bit, but what about with your staff? Like, you've talked to me about some of the things that your staff creates. What are they doing to try to create these experiences? What are some things?
Yeah. We have super creative, fun people working with us. I think at Milady's in particular, we were talking about how important it is to listen to their ideas. I've gotten to a place now where I'm older than they are by a great deal. And, it's a young person's industry, and they came to me, they were like, "Oh, we want to do a karaoke night," which to me sounded terrible. But they were so excited about it that I was like, "Okay, well, what would this look like and how would we do this?" And this was an experience that they wanted and that they thought that their friends and people their age would also really have fun with. So I try to listen, hear them out, and give the best things a go, and just try to support them.
I love it. Yeah, you really do feel that. And both all the different bars that you have a very different vibe because of that. Because I think you do let those folks that are running that bar every day take the reins and feel some ownership of the experience that people are going to get.
It
Certainly.
makes them excited to come to work. It's much more fun when you are a part of what is happening there and not just doing what the owner is telling you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think also listening to them and hearing about the things that they're passionate about and what they love. They do their jobs very well. It may not be what they feel like they're on this planet to do. And so I try to dig in and have conversations with everybody and ask them about, particularly the team at Milady's is so creative and artistic, and they're always performing and making art and things like that. And these are the things that motivate them. And so we're always listening to what it is and being encouraging. And if we can attend performances and things like that, we try to do that. Or people are interested in business courses. I've sat down and looked through financials with countless number of staff members just to help them understand how those things work. And I think that creates, again, that environment of like, we're heard here and we have opportunities for advancement, whether it's here or someplace else.
You guys are awesome. I love you even more than I did before this half an hour. So thank you for joining us. Thanks everybody for listening. And hopefully we'll get you guys back here again. Thank you.
Love it. Bye.
Thanks, Christine.
Bye.